We've all heard the phrase, "They fight like cats and dogs," tossed around as if it's a universal truth. But what if one day that phrase got rewritten, not by words, but by an act of silent grace between two creatures that the world had already given up on? What if, in the forgotten corners of a shelter, a bond bloomed between paws that should have been enemies? In a world that so often overlooks the voiceless, this isn't just an animal rescue. It's a message. One small kitten's desperate cry and one lonely dog's waiting heart, both abandoned, both misunderstood. And yet, when fate pushed them into the same space, something happened that would leave even the hardest souls in tears. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Egg's story didn't begin with warmth. It began in filth, fear, and hunger, the grim symphony of alleyways, lit by flickering street lamps and echoing with the distant sounds of traffic and survival. She was born to a wild mother who knew no safety and offered only survival instincts. Every morning brought a new battle for food, a scramble over siblings just to taste a scrap, a relentless hunger in her tiny belly. She was the runt, the weakest link, and nature has never been kind to the smallest in a litter. Life doesn't pause for those left behind, and for Egg, it was becoming clear that she was falling behind in a race where the losers don't make it to the next dawn. But then came the sickness. A slow, merciless fever that crept into her bones and dulled her eyes. And her mother, hardened by survival and instincts older than love, made the decision that haunts the wild. She turned away. In the ruthless laws of the street, survival means sacrifice, and Egg, small and feverish, was left alone. Alone to cry, alone to tremble in a corner between garbage and shadows. Her cries were not loud. They were fading, weak things like wind trying to lift itself from silence. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And that's when Lucy appeared. A woman walking by the alley, heading home with the weight of the world on her shoulders, paused mid-step. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was heaven whispering. But she heard it, that soft, dying mew. Her breath caught. "Hello?" she called out, her voice unsure. Her heart pulled her down that alley as if her soul had recognized another broken one. And there, tucked behind a rusted trash bin, was Egg's skin clinging to bones, eyes dull but watching. Watching with the last embers of trust left in her tiny body, Lucy didn't hesitate. She took off her jacket, whispering comfort as she gently wrapped Egg's fragile body. The kitten didn't resist. There was no energy left for fear, only the aching hope of warmth. Cradling her like a newborn, Lucy ran to the shelter to hope, to help. She didn't care about protocols. She didn't worry about claws or diseases. In that moment, humanity touched the wild. And the wild responded not with fury, but with a flicker of surrender. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. At the shelter, chaos was the norm. They were full, overflowing with cases just like this. But Egg was different. One glance at her limp body and trembling whiskers changed everything. "We'll make space," someone whispered. And they did. The vet team swarmed. Infection, worms, dehydration so severe her organs were shutting down. Time wasn't just running out, it was almost gone. They hooked her up to fluids, treated the parasites, warmed her little frame, and placed her in an isolation chamber. Every 2 hours, someone fed her with a syringe. They watched. They prayed. They waited, and then, like the first sunlight after weeks of storm, she opened her eyes wider. She meowed. She ate, and she fought. Not with claws, but with spirit. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Every day was a miracle. Her fur was removed. Her stomach settled. Her tiny voice returned, louder now, indignant about late meals, demanding attention like a diva in recovery. One vet chuckled, "She's got fight in her now." They named her AJ, because she had cracked open from suffering, but still held the promise of new life. But as she grew stronger, a new problem emerged. There were no cat enclosures available. Every space was full. Egg couldn't return to isolation, and placing her with an adult cat could trigger territorial aggression. They needed a solution, fast, and that's when someone suggested the impossible. What if we tried a dog? At first there was silence. A dog with a kitten this small? But then a name rose up like a quiet answer. Sadi, Sadi, the golden retriever with the soul of a grandmother and the eyes of a healer. She had been at the shelter for over a year, ignored, forgotten, always the one watching quietly as other dogs barked and got adopted. She had licked wounds. She had nudged frightened puppies. She had laid beside the grieving. There was something divine about her presence, like she knew more about pain than any human could guess. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. When they placed Egg into Sadi's enclosure, everyone held their breath. The kitten froze. Sadi looked over, calm, gentle, then slowly walked forward and sniffed the fragile newcomer. Egg didn't run. Instead, she leaned slightly into Sadi's fur, as if recognizing something ancient and warm. And then, in a moment that would bring anyone to tears, Sadi lay down beside her and tucked Egg close. The tiny kitten let out a breath and slept. Safe, protected, loved. That night, the shelter didn't just save a life. It witnessed the rebirth of something pure, the silent, healing bond between two beings who had no reason to trust, but chose love anyway. This is the wild rewriting the rules. This is what hope looks like in fur and heartbeat, and this is only the beginning. At the shelter, Sadi was more than just a dog. She was a quiet guardian, a golden soul cloaked in fur and patience. Everyone adored her. From the youngest volunteers to the hardened, overworked staff members, they all found something healing in her eyes. She never barked unnecessarily, never demanded attention. She simply was a calming presence in the chaos, a silent balm in a place echoing with desperate cries and nervous paws. But even as she bathed in the warmth of human affection, Sadi longed for something deeper, someone to protect, to nurture, to truly need her. And that longing was answered in the most unexpected form. A trembling kitten named Egg, he heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. When the shelter workers gently placed Egg inside Sadi's enclosure, no one knew what to expect. This was not standard protocol. This was not in the manual. This was instinct, a last hope born from love and necessity. Egg was a bundle of nerves and trauma, eyes wide with confusion, body hunched low with fear. She had survived disease, abandonment, and near death. And now she was being placed into a space with a creature so large and unfamiliar, her instincts screamed at her to hide. But there were no shadows to disappear into, no corners deep enough to vanish in. So Egg simply crouched, frozen, trembling like a fragile leaf caught in a storm, and stared at Sadi with a mixture of terror and pleading. Sadi didn't move immediately. She just watched. Her brown eyes, always soft, became even gentler. And then she moved, slowly, gracefully, as if every step was a message. I'm here. I won't hurt you, I promise. Egg hissed. It was all she knew, a last defense from a world that had given her every reason to distrust. But Sadi didn't react. She lay down. Right there, a short distance away, quiet, still, radiating patience. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. The shelter staff stood motionless, watching this sacred moment unfold like a prayer answered. Would you look at that? Someone whispered, their voice cracking. It's like she knows. And she did. Somehow, Sadi knew that Egg was fragile. That this wasn't a time for excitement or barking. This was a time for silence and safety. For 10 long minutes, the room was quiet except for the distant hum of fans and the occasional shuffle of feet. Then a miracle happened. Egg took a step, then another, tentatively, trembling. Curiosity overtook fear. Her tiny nose inched forward toward Sadi's, sniffing the unknown. Every time Sadi shifted even a whisker, Egg jumped back. But again and again she returned. Her instincts were being rewritten by compassion. And then Egg's small body gave into the exhaustion she had been running from. Slowly, cautiously, she crawled into the crook of Sadi's golden fur. And Sadi, in one of the most tender gestures ever witnessed, curled her massive frame around the kitten, not to trap, not to dominate, but to protect. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Tears filled the eyes of the shelter staff. Grown adults, used to pain and loss, stood there silently crying as the image before them unfolded. The predator and the prey. The feared and the fragile, lying together as if they'd known each other their whole lives. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered Maria, her voice thick with emotion. "She's protecting her like she's her own child." Just like always, because sometimes love doesn't need a reason. It just needs to be seen. And kept together. Did this story touch your heart? If you saw two bonded animals crying when separated, would you take them both home? Or just one? Let us know in the comments below. And if this emotional true story warmed your heart, please like and subscribe, for the implications went deeper than anyone wanted to admit. How much love animals were capable of. How easily humans forget. This wasn't just companionship. This was chosen family. The next morning, when the staff returned, they found something even more breathtaking. Sadi and Egg weren't just sleeping together anymore, they were playing. Sadi lay on her side, tail wagging softly as Egg pounced, tumbled, and rolled over her like a tiny explorer discovering a mountain of gold. She swatted playfully at Sadi's ears, and the big dog never flinched, always careful not to hurt her. The laughter in the room was genuine, the kind that shakes off sorrow. They had become inseparable. They had become home to each other. Two are better than one, for if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But then came the test. A young couple walked in one morning, smiles on their faces, hope in their voices. "We're looking for a kitten," they said. "We already have a dog at home and want to adopt a cat to complete our little family." The moment they saw Egg, the mother's eyes lit up. "She's perfect," she said. "We'll take her." The shelter workers froze. Sarah stepped forward carefully. "She's very bonded with Sadi, our golden retriever. We'd recommend considering them together." "They're incredibly close." The father shook his head firmly. "We can't have two pets. We just want the kitten." Legally, the shelter had no choice. Egg was adoptable. They couldn't deny the adoption. But something in their hearts screamed no. Maria's hands trembled as she began preparing the paperwork. "I don't feel right about this," she whispered, eyes on Sadi and Egg, curled up together one last time. When the family returned with a carrier, the energy shifted. As soon as Sadi saw it, she started to whimper. Her eyes darted between the humans and Egg. She knew, somehow, she knew. The carrier door opened, and staff reached for Egg. The kitten let out a terrified wail and scrambled to the far corner, trying to disappear. Sadi barked, not aggressively but with anguish. She lunged toward the crate, desperate to stay close. The staff tried to calm her, but she howled, her voice cutting through the shelter like a siren of grief. "Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep." Tears were streaming down Asar's cheeks now. "Please," she begged the family, "please just look at them. You're breaking their hearts." But the family stood firm. They had made their decision. As they carried Egg away, her tiny cries grew fainter with every step. Sadi's howls echoed off the shelter walls, each one more heartbreaking than the last. The staff stood helplessly, many of them crying openly. "We should have refused," Maria said through clenched teeth. "We should have found a way." But they couldn't. The law was the law. And now love was being ripped apart by red tape. Back in her cage, Sadi lay down in the corner where Egg used to sleep. She didn't bark. She didn't move. She just pressed her nose into the bedding, breathing in the last scent of the kitten, who had filled the void in her soul. And for the first time in a year, she didn't wag her tail. This wasn't just a separation. It was a heartbreak felt by two creatures who only ever wanted one thing, someone to hold on to. But sometimes, even the most perfect bond faces the cruelest test, and the world watches. To see if love is strong enough to bring them back together. 3 days had passed since Egg had been taken home, but they felt like a lifetime. The shelter still echoed with Sadi's cries. Her golden frame barely moved. Her eyes, once rich and warm, were now faded like the sun behind heavy clouds. She didn't eat. She didn't drink. Her toys lay untouched. Even the gentle words from the staff couldn't pull her from her sorrow. Something inside her had shut down. The bond that had given her life its meaning had been ripped away, and in its place was emptiness. My soul is downcast within me. Therefore I will remember you. Then the phone rang. It was the mother. Her voice trembled with panic. Something's wrong, she whispered. Egg won't eat. She won't play. She just sits by the window, crying. She won't respond. To us, not even our dog, it's like she's not even here. The shelter director's voice softened, weighted with heartbreak. She's grieving, she explained. She's lost her best friend. Back at home, the father stared at Egg, curled by the window, her small body hunched like a ghost of what she was. She wouldn't respond to food, wouldn't purr, wouldn't even move unless it was to peek outside, as if waiting for someone to come rescue her heart. I can't bear this, he whispered to his wife. We have to go back. And so they did. Early the next morning, they placed Egg into her carrier once more, not for a journey of hope this time, but one of redemption. The kitten was limp, barely holding on. Her tiny eyes, once filled with curiosity, now held nothing but sorrow. She didn't resist. She simply waited. When they arrived at the shelter, it was as if time had stopped. The staff didn't smile. They didn't speak. Their faces told the whole story. Sadi stopped eating the day after you left, Sarah said quietly, leading them through the halls. She gave up. And then they saw her, the golden retriever who once radiated warmth, now looked like a fading shadow. She lay in the corner of her enclosure, her head resting on the same patch of bedding where Egg used to sleep. Her body was still, her spirit even more so. The mother gasped, "Oh my God." But then something shifted, a sound, the carrier door. A scent on the air. Sadi's ears twitched. Her nose lifted. A tremble passed through her. Egg, Egg. One of the children called softly. And then the world exploded back to life. The carrier burst open. An Egg shot out like a bullet of joy. Sadie sprang to her feet, her tail wagging violently for the first time in days. They collided in the center of the room. Egg purring so loudly it echoed against the walls. Sadi covering her in frantic kisses. Whining with joy. The staff wept. The family wept. Everyone there was witnessing something sacred. The reunion of two souls that had found light in each other's darkness. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. The father fell to his knees, voice cracking with remorse. They're dying without each other. How could we have been so blind? The mother was already crying, crouching down as Egg leapt into her lap, Sadi pressing herself against her side. Both animals were trembling, not with fear, but with relief. We'd like to adopt them both, the mother said, her voice choked with emotion. We'll figure out the allergies. We'll do whatever it takes. They're meant to be together. The first time in days, Sarah smiled. Let me get the paperwork. From that moment forward, Sadie and Egg weren't just survivors. They were symbols of something greater. They moved into a warm, love-filled home where their bond could finally bloom without fear. Their days were filled with sunbeams, long naps, playtime, and the kind of peace only found when your heart is whole. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Egg followed Sadi everywhere. Whether it was walks in the park, resting under the trees, or curling up by the fireplace, they were always side by side. Sadi became more than a dog. She became Egg's protector, her shadow, her constant source of comfort. And Egg? She became Sadi's spark, the little light. That brought joy to every corner of their new life. The family couldn't help but share their story. They posted videos online, one of which went viral, showing Egg trying to bark alongside Sadi during a morning play session. People from around the world fell in love with them. Comments poured in, stories of how their bond brought hope. To others, I was having the worst day, one viewer wrote, but watching them gave me hope again. But fate wasn't done yet. 3 months into their new life, something miraculous happened. At the park one afternoon, Sadie suddenly broke. away from her usual route and approached a woman sitting on a bench with a small, shaking kitten huddled behind her legs. Sadie didn't bark. She didn't lunge. She just lay down a few feet away, her body language calm, her presence soothing. The kitten peeked out, sniffed the air, and then slowly stepped forward. Within minutes, that same frightened kitten was curled up next to Sadi, purring softly. The woman stared in disbelief. She hasn't let anyone near her since we adopted her. Not even me. What is your dog doing? She's comforting her, their mom said, eyes wide. Just like she did with Egg, word spread fast. Sadi wasn't just a good dog. She was a healer. Soon, people from nearby neighborhoods began reaching out. Could Sadi and Egg meet their anxious rescue? Could they help calm a fearful foster kitten? Could they teach other animals to trust again? Without training or intention, Sadie and Egg had become a therapy team, walking, purring proof that love heals more than wounds. It heals spirits, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. From a cage in a shelter to stars of compassion, they touched the lives of animals and people alike. And every night, as always, they curled up together, Egg pressed against Sadie's fur and Sadie wrapping her large frame protectively around her best friend. Just like on that first door heartwarming animal videos. Because love like this deserves to be shared. Thank you for listening. See you in the next video. And remember, the greatest rescues often go both ways.